18th, 2001, Lowell Planning Board meeting. Tonight, we do have a continuation of one public hearing and a new zoning amendment public hearing. Prior to getting to that, we have the minutes of approval from our April 21st, 2011 board meeting. Any of the board members have any corrections or comments on the April 21st meeting minutes?
Chairman, I'll move to approve the April 21st planning board minutes.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Those minutes have been adopted. Next matter will be for the May 16th, 2001 minutes. Any comments or corrections? There none, we can entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 16th.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Those minutes have been adopted. Moving on to a public hearing. This is a continuation. It was here at our last meeting. This is a site plan review at 550 Bridge Street. It's DCU Dunkin' Donuts. The Lowell Planning Board will hear a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Bridge Street Holding Company, LLC, for site plan review for a project located at the above address. The proposal includes the construction of a 6,200 square foot commercial building with a Dunkin' Donuts and a DCU credit union, with a drive-through facility serving the credit union. Plans include 53 parking spaces with vehicular access from Bridge Street and West 6th Street. The applicant is seeking site plan review under section 11.4 of the City of Lowell zoning code. The 39,628 square foot parcel is located in the traditional mixed-use zoning district. As indicated, this matter was before us at the last public hearing. There were some matters that were discussed and a request for continuance, so we're here tonight as a continuation of the public hearing. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Attorney James Hall, 25 Fletcher Street, Chelmsford, Massachusetts. I represent the petitioner, Bridge Street Holdings. With me is Mr. Donald Eady, a principal in the LLC, and Matt Hammer, our engineer. Just to bring you up to date, this matter has been continued. A couple of weeks ago, we came before you. I was unable to attend. My associate, Raymond Weicker, was here. You reviewed the plans. There were some questions relative to the plans and the site plan to be discussed with the engineer and with the Planning and Development Department. We've spent an awful lot of time doing that, so we're back this evening. What I'd like to do is introduce Mr. Hammer to come and explain his point of view with respect to the engineering, and then reserve some time after that so I can come back to the podium to discuss the matter a little bit further.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name's Matt Hammer. I'm with Hancock Associates. We're here to present a revised plan. We've addressed and reviewed all the comments that came before us from all the municipal departments. We revised a set of plans, and then we've had some follow-up conversations in a meeting as of last Friday with the planning department to go over the proposed plan. So I'll go over those changes with you.
Sure.
One of the comments pertained to providing some additional street trees in order to enhance the sidewalk areas, and we've done that by adding some more street trees here, and to create some more shading and landscaping along the sidewalk along West 6th Street. Another comment was the dumpster area needed some full screening, and we've done that as well. We've rotated the dumpsters 45 degrees, and they're fully screened with a chain link fence with the vertical batten within the chain link fencing that'll match the color of the existing, that the proposed building's going to be. We've also done some modifications to the entrance where there was some questions. We've created larger curb roundings here. And we've provided some additional signage. And in this location, this will be a right only here. We've increased the island to be a larger concrete rumble strip. And since talking with the planning department, if the rumble strip is not agreeable with the board, we could do a sloped granite curbed island. So that way there would be a solid curbing element here in that entrance area. And we've also increased the rounding for the right-only turn here as well. We've also added some additional signage and line work within the parking area so that vehicles moving in this direction that are going to head to West 6th Street will have a stop strip there with a stop sign there. And that was a recommendation from the traffic engineer who provided a full report for the internal workings of the entire facility. We've also provided some additional landscaping in the rear here. And we've discussed with the planning board if this needs to be the required 10-foot strip, we can also provide that as well. They said that we wouldn't have to revise the plans for this evening, and that could be a condition of the permit if needed. There was an overflow pipe that came from the drainage area that we removed that was related to the engineering comments. And generally, those are the primary changes that we've made to the plan from the plan that you've seen before.
Okay, thank you.
I can reiterate, we submitted a traffic study, a report to the board, and the traffic engineer implied through his report that the entire workings of this site is agreeable with their company, and that the main traffic that's going to be coming through this area is going to come off of that existing traffic, come into the facility, and then come back out onto Bridge Street. And he did not see that there was anything wrong with the internal workings of the facility, as well as the curb cuts coming on to Bridge Street and West 6th Street.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify?
Absolutely.
Because we have correspondence from the city's traffic engineer that is contrary to that. So I'm just curious from the timing of all that, Aaron, do we?
I think maybe I'm wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, that you're referring to the traffic engineer that you hired to perform the study, is that correct? The comments that you were just referring to were from the traffic engineer that performed the study? Yeah, not Eric Eby, who's the city's transportation engineer.
Okay. Has it been given to our traffic engineer to review?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Has it been given to Eric to review?
Yeah, he has reviewed it, and his comments address them. And I
Based
can
on,
follow up with that
on
if you like.
Okay.
Paul, anything further you want to say?
I could at this time, but I think it would be more appropriate if I could wait until hear the positive and negative, if I could indulge the board to come back after that.
Okay.
I think it might take a little bit of explaining
Okay.
at that point.
Let me just ask, did you receive the copy of the letter we got from the traffic engineer dated July 11th?
I saw it about July 11th.
July 11th. is
I
the
don't
date.
think I did, no. I think Matt Hammer might have gotten it, but, all right, it might have been sent to me, but I was away for 2 weeks, Mr. Chairman, and I did not put my eyes on it, no.
Aaron, so do you know if Mr. Hall said he doesn't know if he received the copy of this?
We sent those out to Matt and Mr. Hall last Wednesday, and I understand Mr. Hall was busy last week, so it's very possible Attorney Hall.
I was out of the office the last part of the week, and I saw it just about 5 minutes before the meeting, so
Okay.
it's not anyone's fault, but to answer your question, honestly, I really haven't read it through completely to this
I'll
day.
continue with the hearing. I'm sure we're going to come back for a question on this.
Thank you very much.
All right. Does anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Hall? I'm sorry. Okay. and then I'll turn it over to the public in a minute. Aaron, we do have two comments here. I'm going to hear from the public, then I'm going to ask you about your additional comments and also about the traffic engineer, okay? Thank you. Does anybody here want to speak in favor of the site plan on 55 Bridge Street?
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Anne Marie Page. I live at 26 Fremont Street in Lowell, Mass. I am the president of the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group, and I'm here for one reason. What's the best for Centerville? I'm not on anybody's payroll. I'm not getting paid for anything, and I've been here several times. I'm here for one thing. What is the best for Centerville? This project is the best for Centerville. We have pulled it apart, we have cut it up in little pieces, we put it through the meat grinder and put it back. The 80 family has gone above and beyond to satisfy the neighborhood. And there's a lot of questions. Well, what if we drive in here? What if we drive out there? There was a gas station there for years and years and years. You went in off bridge, you came out off bridge. You went on off bridge, you came out on West 6. If you want to work with the lights, you go out on West 6, you come to the light, you work with the light. You don't, you just go in on bridge, come back out on bridge. It's workable. They had the study done that proved it's workable. They have taken a mammoth project and brought it down to two very attractive buildings. A Dunkin' without a drive-through and a digital credit union with a drive-through, which is not a problem. Because when you go to the bank drive-through, they're not like backed up from 6 a.m. to 9 waiting for 300 cups of coffee. So it works. We in the neighborhood want to see this accepted. We're not worried about the landscape. We know it's going to look good because we already have a Dunkin' Donut in our backyard and they keep that looking good. Cut the grass, the plants are low. We don't need big giant trees. We're not building a forest. We're going to have a bank. We want it low, neat, clean, and a few gardens. Dunkin' Donuts has already done that, and they're going to do it again. They have worked with the neighbors. They have done everything they can to get this project going. We have looked at this mess for a long time. It's time to dig the hole. You sit there. I sit in the neighborhood, and I want to see it done. The Centerville Neighborhood Action Group wants to see it done. They have met with the neighbors. They have answered all our questions. They have done their show and tell. It's time to dig the hole. We depend on you to let it go. We know it's workable. We know it's good looking, and we know it's what we need. And this building is going to match another good looking building that's going to go up right down the street shortly. And they all form that same pattern, so it makes a good flow. It is a very, very good project for Centerville, and we're depending on you to push it through tonight. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. So before I turn it over to the board members, we do have a memorandum from Aaron Clausen, our associate planner, gave us a few matters. I think, Aaron, your date was June 18th. I think you meant to say July 18th?
Yes.
Any further comments, anything you want to highlight? I know you did make a note about a couple of things along with the traffic as well as the landscape, and you said you're approving with that so far.
Yeah, I was just, what I wanted to do with this memo was recap how the site plan has been revised to address a lot of the comments that we provided from DPD as well as from the city engineer's office. The first one has to do with, I don't want to go into too much detail because I think Matt's addressed most of them, but for, just going through the first comment, it has to do with the landscaping, particularly along West 6 where there were street trees added. I think generally what I'm getting at here is that the landscaping that they did, or that they added in this revision, I think generally meets, it shows that it meets the requirements of section 619. and that adding the street trees along, particularly the section of West 6, will help with that pedestrian environment kind of transition into the residential areas. The second comment has to do, again, is with landscape, is related to the 10-foot buffer that would be along the parcel boundary, that I guess you would consider the rear parcel boundary off of West 6. And as Matt had pointed out, and it has discussed earlier, that they'd be willing to move that to the 10-foot buffer per the zoning code. They've also showed the dumpster location, and you know, they are functional and meet the zoning code requirements for being screened. And then comments 4 and 5 are related to the traffic study. And I can refer the board to the set of comments from Eric Eby, as he did have a chance to review that study. The main element of it was a concern from him that the traffic volume data and capacity analysis, which was a part of the original scope that was discussed, wasn't included in the traffic analysis. And that's kind of the part that tells the transportation engineer that the layout of the site is functional, particularly in relation to the intersection, so West 6 and Bridge Street, and then ingress and egress onto and off the site. So with the volume data, the traffic volume data, and the capacity analysis, that's what you'd use to model what the queuing would be for the intersection itself and how cars get on and off, and what that means in terms of level of service, safety, accidents, and that sort of thing. So what his memo goes on to list out are some issues that may or may not be a problem. It's hard to tell without that part of the analysis. And he did some other additional analysis in terms of the number of crashes that were found over at West 6th. So I don't know if you want to go through this in too much detail, but some signal issues for the West 6 intersection have to do with the controller, which is the thing that it's the piece of equipment that times the light, the timing of the light for going north and south for making the left turn movements onto West 6th, is broken and damaged. The signal head facing north, it's an advanced green left turn onto West 6 now, but there's no arrow or any way to signify to drivers that it is an advanced arrow. So you get a kind of dangerous situation at this point where cars don't know whether or not they can make that left turn before oncoming traffic starts heading southbound. And that's a particular concern because there's approximately 200 additional vehicle trips turning on and two off the site based on the new use. We totally agree and understand that most of the traffic generated from this new use is going to be passed by traffic on Bridge Street coming south and north or south. But what is new is the actual turning movements onto the site, the left turn, the right turns, and additional turning movements onto West 6 at the signal intersection. So that was one issue that Eric pointed out as something that could be a way of mitigating some of the impacts of those turning movements. He points out some of the pedestrian buttons aren't working. That again, the traffic timing signal that's phasing would typically be calibrated off the volume and capacity analysis that's conducted in a traffic analysis. And then it goes on to talk about some of the driveways. One of them has to do with the right turn and onto and off the site for the drive access that is right adjacent to the intersection at 6th Street, West 6th and Bridge. Again, without knowing the queuing, it's hard to tell what's the safest operation to get cars back onto Bridge Street, whether it's off of West 6th or a right turn out. And then he's also talked about a little bit moving the access drive of West 6 further back from the intersection to allow a longer queue based on more cars coming out. And we talked about a lot of these things, and I can circle back to that in a second, but they're not necessary. These are all kind of improvements that we would be more comfortable, or have a better understanding of how they need to be implemented if there was a traffic volume and capacity analysis conducted. But these are, based on what we have, these are just suggestions we can work from. And then site circulation, you just had a question on whether or not WB50 trailers would be making deliveries if they are, if they can make it on site which I believe a discussion we had was that they would be able to make it on site if necessary. And I think, again, there is a concern with the configuration of the right in and right out at the intersection with the traffic aisles, so that you had a car, his concern was a car pulling out of the parking space would be pulling into either the right-of-way or into the access drive for cars coming onto and leaving the site. It was too close for that kind of interaction. So that's a lot to run through there. I can again answer any questions you have. That said, my fifth comment is basically, we've been working with the developer and making sure that the site works in terms of traffic, and we'd be happy to continue working with them on a conditional basis. We believe that the project can work, and it's a good project, as I think everybody in this room would agree. It's just fine-tuning a couple minor elements to make sure the traffic works. And then the last comment just is, we agree that I think pretty much all the city engineer's comments have been addressed in the revised. There just might be some details that I haven't heard back from Lisa yet on whether or not she's okay. So if the board wished, it could be a condition on approval that the city engineer review and give final approval on those issues.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to any of the board members. Have any questions, concerns? Any questions, Rich? Mr. Clement, mind if I start with you?
Sure, no problem. Matt, maybe you could address it to you. The memo that we've been talking about is this July 11th memo. Have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, we
There
have.
were a lot of questions and recommendations that the city traffic engineer had on that, and I wonder if you could comment, perhaps go through the comments that he had on that form.
We went through the comments from the traffic engineer, and many of them pertain to off-site improvements related to a traffic study and looking into redoing the light signalization and addressing off-site improvements. And we felt as though at this point it was going to be too detrimental to the process that we were going through. But we did discuss with them contributing to working through that traffic study to try to mitigate some of those issues related to the analysis of it.
Okay. He, I guess he indicated, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's reviewed the traffic study. He would have wanted some more data, but on his own, he collected some data on his own, analyzed 3 years of accident data, and he says, from these evaluations, I have compiled a list of recommendations and actions that should be required of the proponent to ensure safe operation of the site driveways and to mitigate the project impacts at the signalized intersection of Bridge Street, West 6th, and 6th Street. And that's what I'm talking about specifically. He had some specific recommendations. Can you comment on those recommendations from the July 11th memo?
Yeah, one of the recommendations, well, we met with the traffic engineer and the planning director, Aaron Clausen with the planning department on Friday, and we had actually discussed some of these traffic issues. One of them was potentially reconfiguring the backside of the parking area, and we went through how we felt as though the process of cars through the parking area was better suited to be separated from the main parking area in the rear, and for that to be adjacent to the drive-through. But when we were also speaking with them, they were discussing actually doing an analysis after the site was installed, so that they could get a true sense of how this project would be affecting the intersection.
I'm not trying to confuse the issue, but I'm looking at a July 11th memo. He's got some specific recommendations on that. Signal improvements, about the controller cabinet, damage by a vehicle should be replaced, etc. Signal heads facing northbound should be replaced, new signal heads. I'm wondering if you've gone through those and have any comments on those. I'm trying to figure out what you've decided on regarding this memo of July 11th.
Since that date, last Tuesday, I had a conversation with Mr. Clausen, and we kind of agreed at that point, I think, to have my client contribute a sum of money to do a traffic study before and after. it wasn't a sufficient sum of money as I found out on Monday, that it might take more money, but I think we had an agreement that the traffic problem would go away if we contributed a certain sum of money, because really nothing could be done until after it was built, after there was some activity there. They could monitor the light, they could add seconds to that left-hand turn, they might add a left-hand turn light, and all of that was in that, covering what you have in your hand.
All right.
Whether
So,
we have a meeting of the minds at this point is subject to dispute. But that was what I remember happened on Tuesday. I referred that to my client. He agreed to it. And now we have certain other problems that hopefully we'll be able to address later on. But to answer your question, I thought those were not going to be an issue.
okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to find out. We just have this memo that has certain specific recommendations. I'm hearing that we probably are looking to go with what we have here, but we want perhaps a condition that there'll be some sort of ongoing monitoring and some sort of vehicle in place that if some revisions need to be made after the fact, they can be made.
Yeah, if I could maybe shed a little bit more light on that. I actually agree with Jim on this, that what we talked about was a way to, just a little background, this time is of the essence for this project, to get it moved forward in the construction season. So if it's to move forward, we were trying to accommodate a way that it could be done so while making sure that it's a functional, that the site plan is functional from a traffic perspective. So one way to do that is basically allow us, the city, to do the remaining portion of the traffic analysis. And it wouldn't be necessarily what you would see prior to development in a proposal kind of situation, because that's a model. It's based on models, hundreds of thousands of similar examples in traffic accounts to make sure that queuing and traffic circulation works. What we could do, and I think what Matt was referring to, is what makes most sense and is actually more valuable in the long run is to do a before and after count to determine what needs to be fixed to make sure that an intersection works. And this has to do more with the intersection itself and the signal and the timing. And by doing it that way, although we don't have it done before the project is finished, what we do have is a better study. It tells us more accurately what needs to be improved at the intersection to work. What Mr. Hall, or Attorney Hall, was addressing as far as the sum of money was a sum of money that the applicant could provide to the city to actually perform the actual changes to the intersection that we find out after that study has been completed. Again, typically, the typical proposal, you would have a traffic analysis that proposes a series of alterations to the intersection like that we've recently seen at Walgreens. Those are based on models. This is a slightly different situation where it's based on actual data, and we can then use that to improve the signal timing, perhaps provide the left turn arrow, advanced arrow for traffic making left turn on West 6th, as a way to keep the project moving forward, but again, ensuring that the traffic works.
Yeah, and that hasn't been agreed upon yet.
No, and I honestly, well, as far as us being able to provide that as a solution and the sum of money, I would say it has. I mean, I think we agree on that.
It has been agreed.
Yeah, I believe we agree on that. I thought we were, but the question that I think is out there is a little unsettled is the access drive, the southernmost access drive on Bridge Street, whether or not a right in and then a right out as well can work without knowing what the traffic is going to do in the future after post-development. What we wouldn't want to propose is that we do the before and after count, and then say after we find out that it's not going to work based on those counts, have the turn lane closed, because that would just be too costly and it would be too burdensome on the developer. Rather have that figured out now, whether that makes sense. I think that's the one thing, correct me if I'm wrong, that just needs to be ironed out in terms of the traffic.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, I didn't know what was in place in order to, we're putting a nice site in there, and there's obviously going to be traffic there that wasn't there for 15 or more years. how do we deal with it if it's not done appropriately? But if you're suggesting a condition that we can look at it in the future, maybe a review date, I think that would probably work as well, so I'm okay with that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
If I could add one statement to what was discussed there. We've had numerous meetings with the planning department before we initially did the site design. Initially, we had a right-only coming into this here, to the facility here, and then we had a follow-up meeting afterwards, of which the planning department recommended to have a right-only coming out here. Based on those preliminary meetings, we then set the design to incorporate all of that. And that's when we started to add the rumble strip and the raised curbing and everything else related to that. Our traffic engineer has since looked at this site and determined, based on the 2001 volumes that we had from the engineering design report from the downtown traffic study, that this wasn't going to be an issue here related to the intersection. So we did address that with our traffic engineer related to that entrance, followed up by the recommendation that we actually add this in here to have that right only. So we provided the necessary signage. We increased the radial to steer people in that direction in order for that to work.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes. Mr. Lockhart?
My main concerns are with the traffic and what Attorney Claremont has covered, so I'm satisfied with that currently. I like what you did with the additional trees along West Sixth Street. That'll really dress up the area from a landscaping standpoint. The last time you were here, I asked a question about lighting, some type of decorative lighting along the street somewhere, similar to what CVS has down the street, and I'm wondering if you did consider that and looked at it.
They wanted to maintain the consistent lighting that they have in their other facilities, which is a downward-facing lighting. And I believe there's 14 lights in this facility as well. So you're going to get a lot of
Then the
light
parking
that's going to
area.
pass on to
Yeah,
the sidewalks
okay.
you're going
All
to
right.
find from the site.
All right, fine. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
thank you.
Chet?
First of all, I commend the applicant for what's being proposed. Obviously, I think everybody is pleased to see some progress relative to this site, and the additional landscaping, I think, with the shrubbery and adding the larger trees, I think it will actually add very nicely aesthetically to how this will look on West Sixth Street. One of the main reasons for continuing the last meeting was really as a direct recommendation of the city's traffic engineer wanting to clear up some of these items. And again, I hate to harp on this, but I'm going to come back to the memo of July 11th, because we were focusing in on the off-site recommendations. But once again, from this memo, it makes it very clear to me, unless I'm missing something, that he has some specific recommendations relative to the site. And I'd like to have those addressed. And there are 3 bullet items. And the second bullet item, which we didn't even mention, is the entrance closest to the condominium, separated only by a stockade fence. And he alludes to the fact that it's imperative that the fence be less than 3.5 feet tall within 15 feet of the curb on Bridge Street. So if you could address that.
Yeah, we did
please.
discuss that,
Okay.
where the first 15 feet of this fencing will be lowered to transition down to a 3-foot height.
Okay, so it
Yep.
will, okay.
I've discussed that.
And then the site, this is right where on West Sixth Street, should be shifted as far as possible. It says the site driveway on West Sixth Street should be shifted as far as possible to the west end of the site to allow for easier access and egress from the site without the driveway being blocked by vehicle queues on West Sixth Street from a signal at Bridge Street. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because
We,
Has it been moved from, it looks like it's in the same location.
yeah, we received a sketch plan of a recommendation to reconfigure the rear parking area. And what that did was it provided an access lane that would go through the parking area and exit out here. But what that was doing is introducing what's going to be a fairly traveled lane through a parking area where we thought that having that lane free and clear here would be less of an effect with pedestrians parking, and that we could assign pedestrian parking back in this rear here to address that potential issue. So I think from that meeting, at least it was generally agreed upon that the design of this was okay, the way that we have it, instead of redesigning this whole rear parking area.
So Eric was okay with that?
Yeah, so we discussed this. I think there's two things there that would, in the sketch plan that we were trying to offer as an alternative, not the right solution, but alternative was one was to move back the egress and ingress on West 6 so that you could have a longer queuing lane for cars making a left turn or maybe a right turn onto Bridge Street. And that was a reaction to not having a capacity analysis, because we don't know what the queuing is going to be without that. And by moving it farther down West 6th, you provide more space for cars to queue, and you would, again, help with the functional level service of cars making a turn. The other piece of that was there's about 5, with the layout right now, there's about 5 drive lanes intersecting internally in one place. I think Matt's probably pointing that out right now. It would bring the internal drive lane back and around so that it in effect became 4. Both of these are an alternative that we felt solved or went to solve a couple issues in terms of internal and external circulation. However, the particularly with the queue line and moving the drive lane farther down 6th Street, it's a precautionary kind of thing that Eric was trying to suggest, because we don't have an understanding of what the queuing is going to be during peak hours. It likely may not be necessary to do that to make sure that queue works. But it was a recommendation of an alternative, or a suggestion of an alternative that would address the queuing line issue potentially. But I think what the point that Matt's making is that what they were trying to do was separate pedestrian and vehicular conflict on an internal part of the site. It does make sense, and it's a valid concern, and I think one that they're addressing with their layout. So it was an alternative that we wanted to discuss with them. I think what we're talking about with as an agreement of working on West 6, to make sure that light's working. The queuing line may not be an issue, or is likely not to be an issue. So moving that drive lane farther down the street is not likely necessary. It was more of an alternative to look at based on the fact that we don't know what that queue line is going to be.
So from a vehicular and pedestrian potential conflicts, you felt that this was probably the best layout of the 3?
Well, I mean, it's to separate the pedestrian and internal vehicular drive lane. It does make sense, and in that way, it probably would work better. But we were trying to look at other issues to deal with that, relocating that drive lane. So this is it's a workable layout, and it should be noted that it's a workable layout in circulation plan to bring it back as they've shown. But the alternative was to address a couple other issues that are kind of unknowns.
I mean, I know timing was tough, but it certainly would have been helpful to have a subsequent memo to this memo, because this was pretty definitive as far as specific recommendations based on traffic. Matter of fact, it really refers to, he was looking for a traffic study, and was presented was a traffic memorandum. I don't think it was as comprehensive as Eric was looking for.
Right.
And that was the reason why we continued this meeting, was in order to have the analysis from that. So, I mean, that's to put all of that in context. But certainly, again, understanding that this has been a long time in the makings, and matter of fact, I think we almost made a mistake by looking for a solution for this project and coming up with something that was probably going to have a negative effect citywide. So I think we've come up with something that the applicants come up with something that is palatable to the neighborhood, and appears to be a solution to a lot of the issues that were were of concern in prior proposals. So certainly, if DPD is confident that this is a workable site, certainly be happy to move forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fijan. Mr. Gentleman, any comments, questions, concerns?
Just to reiterate, Mr. Chairman, I have to abstain on this matter.
I just only have a couple of questions. Matt, if you could go back to that entrance there, you told me where that sloped granite curb could be. You mentioned we could either go with the sloped granite, or what was the alternative?
Well, we have a rumble strip there now. We feel as though the cars are going to be potentially hitting this island. And if we did a sloped granite, that would provide some relief and make it less dangerous for vehicles that could potentially be hitting it. We would rather leave it a rumble strip. We feel as though those work in other sites that are similar to this. We can also put the vertical warning strips that come up out of the island as well. And that's a visual barrier that can come up approximately 3 feet tall. And that would also prohibit people from driving over those as well.
Did that come up in your discussions, Aaron, or?
Yeah, so I think the board will be familiar with some discussions we had with the Walgreens project in a very similar kind of case where the rumble strip does let people know that they're possibly going the wrong way. But when we're looking at something like this, we're looking for a bigger or more defined physical barrier to make sure that a car isn't making a left turn onto Bridge Street, or a car traveling north tries to make a left turn into the site there. So, but we did discuss the slope granite curb, which could work. I think that's a workable solution. It's the same. It's the same
than the slope?
I'm sorry?
Would the vertical granite curb do a better job than the slope?
It would, but I think what was proposed, and correct me if I'm Matt, it was a 6-inch reveal on the slope, so that it's more about the elevation change. It's about that reveal that's important in making that physical barrier. So just the fact that they were proposing something that was a 6-inch reveal was enough of a barrier.
I know a lot of times we go with the vertical granite, because usually, more times than not, that's the recommendation of the city engineer.
Yeah, for the street curb line,
Right.
correct. And I think that has to do with paving and making sure that it's...
So I didn't know if that would come into effect here as well. Would it be better off with the vertical?
Well, we'd have to run that by her, but I think as far as what we were talking about is creating that physical barrier, that the slope, as long as the reveal was 6 inch, that 6-inch reveal is the important part of, and that might be, she may have a similar feeling along those lines.
I could add something.
Sure. Matt, if you
Typically,
would.
we do have that vertical curbing along the sidewalk, and that's common.
Right.
But typically inside sites,
Right.
we tend to do the slope granite curbing. And I think if we provide that physical barrier, I think you're gonna have a rare instance where someone's gonna actually try to drive over that if you have the slope granite. And then if the plows are coming in and people actually do hit that island, because it is gonna be out here out in the right-of-way, that you're gonna less likely to have blown tires, accidents, and things of that nature. I did notice, when people are riding bikes down the sidewalk, if they come off the sidewalk here, and they're not gonna hit that physical barrier with a vertical granite curbing. If it's sloped, they can have a chance at that point too, so.
They can rise up the slope where the vertical is not forgivable.
That's right. So you can make a jump off the slope.
Okay. Any further comments from the board members? Any further questions? Obviously, this is a project that the board's been looking forward to because we know it's been a work in progress with the neighborhood association. I know when it came in for the zone change, we were in favor of it, so it could get in there what the neighborhood is looking for. Obviously, what we're talking about now is just trying to fine-tune the recommendations from our city staff to make sure that it's the safest possible project for the city and the neighborhood. So, a lot of it, I know we have some conditions here that the engineer wants to look at. I know Division of Planning and Development also requested that they'd be willing to go along with the applicant on the final landscaping plan, and Matt indicated that they will do that buffer zone in the back, the 10-foot rear strip. I think so. This could be a project that could be very beneficial to the city if we had some maybe conditional approvals to work with DPD and conditional approval with the traffic engineer. 'Cause I know as Jerry said, by reading this memo, you're kind of like, well, the traffic engineer has a lot of concern, so, and what communication took place with the, recently, and I know it's a work in progress when it comes before us, sometimes you have meetings with staff members and, traffic engineers, the same day of the meeting, and we don't get that information until the 11th hour, so, just basically my comments on some of the traffic engineer, but the traffic engineer feels this is something that he can work with a conditional approval, as well with maybe the Division of Plan and Development for the final landscaping plan, and, the dumpster location, I know they moved that, but that has to be screened by that code anyway, so that wouldn't be acceptable, you probably wouldn't get the building permit, even if that was not, on conditional approval. So, saying that, like I say, I think it'd be a good project, and hopefully if it can get done with conditional approvals, I think it would make it a better project. So that was my comment. Having said that, any of the other board members have any comments, or?
No, I would just say I do appreciate the neighborhood group supporting the project. I know that they've done a lot of work with the applicant as well, and it's always helpful to have the neighborhood group come down and express their opinions. I know you're out in the neighborhoods, and we're up here, but we're out in the neighborhoods as well, driving the streets and visiting the project, so we appreciate your input.
I have one other question. And I agree with Joe's comments about the neighborhood group. That's
Mr.
to
Chairman?
see you so involved. Just had a question on the stormwater and stormwater infrastructure operations. Has that been reviewed by the city engineer? There was another comment. on
Yes,
this
it has,
memo.
sir.
It has,
It was on the back of yours, Aaron, so last question, stormwater?
yeah.
Yeah, basically, the main element that the city engineer had, the main concern was that an overflow line to the city combined sewer, and that's been removed. So that was the primary
Was addressed.
concern, and that has been addressed.
I'd like to note that we added an additional sheet to the plan set that accommodated during construction all the erosion and sedimentation control measures and things of that nature during construction too.
Any further discussion from the board? If not, then we'll be in order for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt and have my last
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to see that 95% of the matter has been resolved, but I do have to jump in now, and I regretfully do so at this time. But this process, by way of background, started 15 years for the 80 family in purchasing this property, the gas station, and also purchasing the property behind the original piece. The zoning had been changed where they could have put a gas station, a variety store, and a drive-through Dunkin' Donut in 2004, 2005, destroying their dream and plans for this parcel. They've worked for the last 6 or 7 years to bring a viable project back to this parcel. I think they have done so, as the board has said. They have DCU, they have a small Dunkin' Donut with no drive-up window. We have been going at this, planning and replanning this plan. We went to the City Council for a 9-0 zoning change. You fellas came in and supported us on that. Last week, we went to the Board of Appeals with a unanimous decision for the drive-through. They were very understanding and recognizing our time span, that we have to get started right away so that we can deliver this property to DCU by October 1st, which we're not going to be able to do, but I think we can extend it for a month or so. We now come back to Tuesday, where I thought that we had an understanding that all these traffic issues that were brought up on the 11th of July or the 18th of July, anything preceding that situation was resolved with an agreement where monies would be paid. There were certain monuments at that set. I mean, I grew up on 7th Street and Methuen Street. In 1945, I was born, and I went to St. Michael's, and I know that intersection. It's probably a lot worse than when I was younger, but there was no discussion of new sidewalks and new turning lanes and new roadways and new infrastructure, because it's a global problem. It's a central problem. The problem was refined very cooperatively with Mr. Clausen, I think, and very affirmatively, because he recognized our time span, that the money would be used to do study before and after. There'd be certain monies hopefully available to maybe fix the turning light or do some other things. and I have to acknowledge, I talked to Aaron today, and probably there isn't going to be that much money there, but we had an understanding, and I think he agreed that I shouldn't say what it was, the money was sufficient. Now we have a situation, in a nutshell, everything has gone away except this right-hand turn on Bridge Street. Everything that's been brought up, all of these comments by the engineers, the planners, and everything else is zeroing in on the issue of that right-hand turn, which we've had on our plan for many, many months. When we first met with everybody, Adam Bakey, all the planners, going through this process with the neighbors who sat in on 2 or 3 of the meetings. And then this morning, albeit I guess I received an email when I was out last week, but this morning I get information that without a full global traffic study with counts, we have to shut down that exit. And I regretfully must inform the board that my client cannot agree to that, that has to stay open. So if there is a condition that there's going to be more study, more plans, and then 6 months or a year or 2 years from now, that exit will be closed, he'd rather not go through with the project. I hate to say that, but that's just where he's at after 15 years. So where we thought we had a deal, we thought we had a situation resolved, it's come to almost an impasse, that if that gets closed down, that's one condition that my client could not live with. Any other reasonable condition, I'm sure, that we've talked about this evening, we could live with. But I thought I would inform the board of his position.
Mr. Hall, if there was a condition that suggested that the applicant continue to work with DBD to make signal improvements and adjust, if necessary, access and egress drive in order to accommodate new customer traffic, would that be acceptable? Is that?
As long as it didn't alter any of the ingress and egress onto our parcel.
Yeah,
I mean,
in my mind, we're not looking to make specific changes, and I understand you need to see how it works before you're able to make any sort of adjustments, but that's sort of the language that's suggested to us, and I think that makes some sense, if it makes sense to
do
you.
you mind if you could read it again?
Just the applicant continue to work with DPD to make signal improvements and adjust, if necessary, access and egress drives in order to accommodate new customer traffic to the project site. Is that same?
I just
Seems-
think it leaves a little bit of a door open. I mean, if it said and not close these sites or dramatically change them, I mean, if you have to put 3 new signs up or maybe alter the direction, as long as we can get in and out of those access ways, I'd have to talk to my client, but I think that would be acceptable. I think we're fearful that as we go on, that as has happened in the past, over the 15 years, we'll get chopped down as we go along. We don't want to build a beautiful new building, show DCU the access and the ingresses, and then agree to some subjective term that might shut down one of their accesses. And then we get a legal fight, we get tenant problems, and it's just too much for us to go along with. But to tweak it, to go along with the signalization, to make reasonable adjustments, I think we would certainly go along with that, yes.
I thought that language was somewhat benign and that might be acceptable, you know, without, I know it's difficult to sort of wordsmith it in a way that, you know, we want to make the adjustments necessary, as you do, to make it a well-functioning site, but I understand that you don't want to say, oh, by the way, what we mean by that is we're going to close your entrance. You know, that's, in my mind, that it certainly would
If you put an addendum
chill
to
the
that,
project.
but not to, you know, give us the death knell on the exit, then that language probably would be acceptable. I just think we have third parties involved and legal agreements in place. And,
No, I understand.
It's just something I'd hate to get involved in after we put several $1 million in the ground and, you know, the tenant wants to leave. So if it was an understanding with the board and with Mr. Clausen, we're not going to close it, but we can adjust it and tweak it and fix it and turning lights and things like that, that seems reasonable to me.
Aaron, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just one thing I'd point out is that we would, as a process, wouldn't ever put a condition or recommend a condition that the developer.
I'm sorry, Aaron, I'm sorry,
Okay.
because of the fans, and I
Gotcha.
think I'm going deaf,
All right,
but
I'll
if you
speak
wouldn't
more
mind. Sorry.
As a general principle, we wouldn't recommend a condition that a developer move forward with construction whereby there might be something down the line that would close out or change the way the circulation or the site functions, because I think that is burdensome. I could absolutely understand why a developer wouldn't want to move forward from that standpoint, that they have something that was constructed and the cost of going backwards is that much more. So I totally agree with that, and I think we can work with the developer to find a way that makes the site work with the access and egress as it is now. I think some of the recommendations that we made that have to do with particularly, sloped granite curbing or some sort of a greater physical barrier allay a lot of our concerns with cars making, I'll call it illegal turning movements, what is in essence cutting across traffic in a way that is completely unsafe. That a physical barrier does a much better job. So I think there are smaller things like that we're talking about. The idea of eliminating it as a necessity.
So, I'm
is not
sorry, it
necessarily
was
what we-
adjust but not close the access and egress
I think
drives.
we can work with that.
That seemed to make some sense.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know if there were any other.
Anyone else has discussion on that, or any further discussion?
No, I agree with that
All right,
statement.
I'd make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman, with conditions, and the conditions I'd suggest would be three. One, as stated on the memo of June 18th, the final approval of a final landscape plan to be submitted. Two would be that the applicant continue to work with DPD to make signal improvements and adjust but not close, and adjust if necessary, access and egress drives in order to accommodate new customer traffic to the project site. So adjust but not close. Be the second one. And then the third one would be approval by the city engineer of the final plan, stormwater plans and infrastructure operations and maintenance plan. Those were, I think, your points 5 and 6 on your memo.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion? If not, a second? Do we have a second?
I'll
on that motion?
second the motion. Just a point with, are we gonna do some traffic analysis before and after?
So the question
And
was.
should that be part of the?
The traffic analysis, you're gonna be doing that ongoing, right?
Yeah, so that's part of what we were discussing with the applicant, is that the city
Right,
would
right.
conduct that instead of the applicant, and that's part of the larger package, and that instead of doing the whole analysis before construction, it would be done before and after, because with the city actually implementing the mitigation and the improvements to the intersection, we have a little bit more control after the fact, whereas if it's built and then you had a developer doing it, they're in a more difficult position for them to complete that. So that it works better, it's better data for us, and since we're on the hook basically to finish that.
And I think that's all within the working with DPD on these.
That was the
That's
intent
really
of that.
part of it, yeah, okay. So I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, so we have 4 in favor, none against, and 1 abstention. Ms. Page, we want to thank the Neighborhood Association for all the input on this matter, okay?
Yeah, a lot of good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Attorney Claremont or Chairman Linehan, I was just wondering if we could go through, I have the language of the first 2 conditions. I just want to clarify, make sure I have the third one. It has to do with the city engineer's comments, correct?
Yeah, a third one would be approval of the final engineering plan, stormwater and stormwater infrastructure operations and maintenance plan.
Like your last comment, Aaron, on your letter?
So basically the language of that, okay,
Your last final comment was just to make sure they signed off on that.
great, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Thank you. Moving along to the next matter. Next matter, we have a new business for zoning amendment. The zoning amendment is with Livingston Ave area and permit notification. A public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to the proposed zoning amendment to change a number of properties in Livingston area to a suburban, single-family zoning district and a proposed change to section 11.1.7, notification of application for building permits. I know most of us have seen a lot of this in a local newspaper in regards to the council brought this up to have this matter changed. So I know we do have a letter from the city manager outlining that they do want the planning department to survey all property owners, was it Livingston Ave, Harvard Street, Nicolette Street, and Troy Street. Those are the streets that would be affected by the matter. I do know that we do have a letter in our packet indicating how Division of Planning and Development did a survey and numbers came back, who were in favor, who weren't not in favor, and they referred it to us for a public hearing in this matter. My understanding is it's before the council for their public hearing. I think it's August 9th, if memory serves me correctly. Is that right, Aaron, for public hearing before the council? I think it's a Tuesday night, August 9th, isn't it?
I believe it was the week after that, but
Okay.
it was
I
either
know it's coming up in a couple
the...
of weeks, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry?
But I know it's a few weeks after tonight's meeting, correct?
Correct,
For
that's
the-
correct,
for the-
yep.
okay. So do you want to speak on behalf of the zoning project, or do we have anybody else who's going to be the applicant per se, or just,
I can address the general scope of what
okay, if you would, please, yeah.
planning board's looking at. This, as the board may know, that this proposed zoning amendment is resultant of a A&R subdivision on Livingston Street that was at the minimum zoning requirements, however met the A&R standards for a subdivision. And so there was a growing concern about the zoning standards, particularly, I think, the minimum lot size and the frontage requirement. So there was a growing discussion at the city council and the public about what would the appropriate zoning district be for this area, which is Livingston, Harvard, and then there's what's proposed in the amendment, a couple of the sites, a couple parcels on Troy, and, if I get this right,
Nicolette Street, I think it is?
Nicolette Street, correct. So the public discussion that happened kind of with the city council over a period of time was what was the appropriate zoning requirements, what was the appropriate district for this area. And as you had referenced, Chairman, we did surveys, we sent out surveys at the request of the council to people who lived along these on these streets and adjacent streets, of whether or not they would be favorable, they would look favorably on a zoning change, as well as a creation of a historic district, which has already taken place. There's a historic district that roughly, or exact, I think exactly is the same as what the zoning change is. The boundaries of that district are identical. So what is before you is basically the outcome of that, and overwhelmingly everybody in the area had been in favor of both the zoning change and the creation of the historic review district. And so what is here is a proposal reflecting that to change it from TSF to SSF.
Thank you. Anyone here want to speak in favor of the zone change?
Hi, Roberta Burns, 90 Livingston Avenue. It's ironic that Mrs. Page was just here saying to dig the hole in Centerville when we tried to prevent it on Livingston Avenue. That didn't work. So now we're stepping to our next measure to save what's left of the neighborhood. There are a couple of yards that can be divided, and we're trying to prevent that from happening. So if you could help us along with that tonight, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the zone change?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Mary Burns, 90 Livingston Ave, Lowell. I think you all know what's been happening on Livingston Avenue and trying to preserve what's left of one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. It's been intact since the 1800s. The homes have been single-family homes since the 1800s, and we would like to keep our neighborhood one of the last historical neighborhoods in the Highlands. And we ask for the board's support tonight, and we urge you to look at all of the neighborhoods in the city when the city council is going to be rezoning the entire city once again to prevent what has happened on Livingston Avenue from happening in other beautiful neighborhoods in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to any of the board members. Any of the board members have any questions, concerns, or any statements? Mr. Gentleman, if I may?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I completely support this zoning change. I think that, we really need to be protective of our neighborhoods in the city. It's important that we keep the standards in our neighborhoods at a level where people are going to want to live in them. Otherwise everybody will move out. We wouldn't want that to happen. So I think that neighborhood coming forth, trying to protect their neighborhood and keep it from overgrowth is a good thing. So I can't see why we wouldn't want to support a measure like this. The question I did have, though, Aaron, is it looks like, and it was interesting that the memo pointed out that everybody on Troy Street was in favor, yet it looks like we stopped the zoning as we went down Troy Street, and Putnam and Troy are not included in this kind of single-family zone, and it just seemed kind of random where we stopped there, and I wonder if there was any reasoning behind that.
The boundaries of the district were primarily chosen based on the parcels that were of a certain size and dimension and shared, most shared those similar characteristics. If you're looking on the kind of the map that we provided to you as part of actually the amendment, Putnam Ave and Troy particularly have rather small lots that are actually smaller than the current zoning. They're smaller than, I think it's 7,000 square feet, which is the traditional single-family minimum requirement. That in effect, changing it to suburban single-family one doesn't change anything for those properties,
Right.
Except that it may restrict their ability to build a back deck because there are different setback requirements in
Right,
suburban
right.
single-family. So as far as the concern, which I think is incredibly valid, is preserving neighborhood character. Making the zoning change, particularly for Putnam Ave and the rest of Troy Street, was not going to change, in effect, what's already there in any way.
I see. Okay, so the lots on Putnam at the top of Troy there are small enough where, under the current zoning, it would be nearly impossible for the lots to be subdivided anyway, and it seemed to fit to keep the zoning consistent there, or the same there.
Correct, based on kind of the size and dimensions of the parcels, so that you kept the parcels together that shared similarities in those districts. I think some of the reason that you see on Troy Street, for instance, on the south side of the street, there are a number of houses that are on actually similar sizes as those as Putnam Ave.
Right.
The boundary of the district as proposed was intended to align with the actual historic review district, design review district, and that had to do with making sure that a concern raised by the legal department about spot zoning.
Yes.
That it added strength or a strong foundation to create the boundaries as they are if they were aligned with the historic design review district itself. And so that design review district was actually based on when the original subdivisions of these properties happened, 100 years ago, so that the zoning district boundary, in some ways, when you're looking at that, doesn't quite seem to carry through with that logic, but we had to pull those in so that it was aligned with the historic district, and that the historic district lands were created to align with certain history of how that land was developed over time.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gentleman. Mr. Fischett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, looking at the memorandum in our packet and looking at the map, I'm satisfied that proper outreach was performed, and in order to receive feedback from the neighborhood. Obviously, there's been a lot of focus on what's happened up there recently on Livingston, and one of the concerns I had in looking at the map is, or prior to seeing the map, is what we were going to see as a proposal, because you don't want to end up with non-conforming lots, and then if the residents want to do anything, they have to go before the zoning board of appeals because everything's a variance because you're non-conforming. But it seems like that was for the most part, properly addressed in the zoning change, and that the homes that, the lots that are being proposed fall into that, into the proper category. Because again, you can have the opposite effect, and then anything you want to do to your home is going to require variance. So certainly, there's no one in opposition. I have some experience with surveys that are performed in the neighborhood, and that's a relatively favorable response, getting 25% surveys back, and certainly, for the most part, I think the neighborhood's in favor of it, and certainly driving through that neighborhood, looking at the homes that are there, looking at the size of those lots, certainly this is a step in the right direction to preserve the really what a lot of those homes really are estate type of properties, and keeping the lots at these particular dimensions certainly will help to preserve the nature of those structures. So certainly, based on what's being proposed here, I certainly would recommend to the City Council to vote in favor of the zone change. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Lockhart's our representative on the Historic Board, and he's our chairman on the Historic Board, so I know, Rich, you said to me earlier this had already been approved by the Historic Board?
I did. At our last meeting, as a representative to the Historic Board, we did vote this historic district in, which essentially is the same thing you're seeing on the documentation presented tonight in the crosshatched area. And what that does, it gives a level of protection to the neighborhood in that any new construction or any demolition that takes place within this area comes under the purview of the Historic Board, and we need to review that and approve it before it goes anywhere. So that's one level of protection. And then by rezoning that into this new single-family zoning district, that's another level of protection because you're getting, different setback requirements. So I'm certainly in favor of this, and certainly in favor of protecting some of the beautiful architecture that's up in that neighborhood. That's all.
Thank you. Attorney Claremont?
Well, I certainly agree. I would support this amendment and recommend supporting it to the City Council. Another important facet of this is the portion that is now going to require that applications for building permits be posted, and that will include foundation permits, because what was happening is the foundations would go in, and that's the first notification the neighborhood would have that anything was going to happen. And once the foundation's in the ground, it's difficult to undo it. So I think that's an important notice requirement that's built into this amendment as well. So I will support it.
I too will support the zone change. I think it's a good recommendation. I think that DPD did a good job on outlining what houses actually fit into it. As Mr. Genman said, you don't want to limit, and Mr. Fischette, to certain areas, but I think, as indicated, Livingston and Harvard Street. I grew up pretty close to there. I know a lot of people live in that neighborhood, and the houses are old and they are big lots. When you do get down to Putman Ave, I knew a lot of people who grew up there, the houses are a lot smaller. So I think they're basically isolated to this area where this possibility could exist in the future. And hopefully, there'll be more scrutiny by the city, and therefore I'm in favor of it as well. So if we could have a motion, as indicated, at the planning board, we're only a recommending body, so whatever recommendation we make will be forwarded to the council. Our recommendation is non-binding, so they can either be in favor with us or against us, but by the way our bylaws are set up, they have to wait to have a public hearing and a recommendation by us before they can vote. Sometimes we've had joint hearings together when time was of the essence. This time they put it through quickly, and we had an opportunity to advertise for a public hearing here. We prefer to have it, our own public hearing, because therefore we get a little more input instead of being, trying to put everybody in together. This way we have more formal discussion amongst ourselves, as well as the Division of Plan and Development. So again, I'm in favor of this matter as well. So if anybody would like to entertain the motion, or...
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the City Council to adopt this proposed zoning amendments.
Second?
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Hereby kids. Any opposition? Hearing none, the recommendation will be forwarded to the City Council, and I want to thank people for coming out tonight on a hot, sticky night and speaking in favor of their neighborhood. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is this the, this must be the lot right here, right?
Moving along, I know we have some notice from abutting towns. We can entertain a motion to place those on file.
So moved?
Second?
We do have some notices from the Zoning Board of Appeals. These are matters that will be going before the Zoning Board of Appeals on July 25th, 2001. They're before us for recommendation only. The first one is for a special permit for a sign on Robert Orr on 1075 Westford Street. They want an internally illuminated one-wall sign for new salon and spa. Want to make a motion that we send this to our design sign planner?
So moved.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Matter carries. Moving along, the next matter is 301 Chelmsford Street. This is here for decision for denial of the building permit application and also for non-conforming structure. I had a chance to speak with Mr. Clausen, our associate planner, and he indicated that they've been working with Division of Planning and Development, and they're going to request that this matter be continued from the Zoning Board of Appeals on July 25th to a future date. So at this point in time, I'd make a recommendation that we take no action on these until the matters come up at a future date. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor on both the matters on 301, and we take no action until it comes back on a future date?
Right.
Okay. So that's a recommendation on both matters. Motion's made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next matter is for a special permit, William Scott, 150 Agawam Street. This is to reconstruct a non-conforming single-car garage that does not meet dimensional requirements. You don't see the car garage too often, do we, Aaron? Usually you see something on the side of the house, but the car garage, we don't see that one too often.
No, you don't, no. And this is, I think this is a garage that they're just trying to repair, and it's just so far gone that they actually had to reconstruct it. So it's one of those challenges where you get kind of the lexicon of when's repair, when's reconstruction, but because it was basically just totally reconstructing the garage, it required a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's been there.
So what, you just put a new garage in what they're doing, or are they still working
It's
to
just-
refix it?
It's in essence the same garage, and just to repair it correctly, they have to essentially tear it down to rebuild it.
Same
And
dimensions and everything?
so,
Mr. Chairman, I recommend we move approval.
Motion made for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes yes, so that matter, so we conclude the zoning board of appeal matters. Do we have any further general correspondence from Division of Planning and Development, if from any board members at this time?
one thing I could add to the 301 Chelmsford project that is going to be before the ZBA on the 25th. They are going to be seeking a continuance, as I understand it. They also may be seeking site plan review on the August 15th meeting.
Okay.
So we're still waiting for some materials, but so as the project's kind of changing and we're working with the developer to make sure that it's done correctly in terms of permitting and relief that they need to seek, we're just getting materials in so that we can move it forward in an expeditious manner, because that's another project that they've been working on for quite some time, and I'm sure we'd like to bring it to
We'll look at
fruition.
the site plan on that, okay.
Yeah, so we're looking at a
Resolve
site
some of
plan.
these issues that they requested the ZBA then, correct?
It looks like it, yeah, I mean, it looks like it.
Any of the board members have any?
The only other thing too is I know it is, of course, but I've been discussing with a member, planning board member Stephen Genrin about packets and getting those packets, and we can talk about that tonight if the board wishes, and how we can make sure that the staff is getting to you all the information material that you need, and we can get it to you as quickly as possible. I think it's two things: timing and making sure that hard copies are sent as well. I don't want to speak for you, but does that sound correct, Steve?
Yeah, Aaron, my only concern about that was, I know that we're using email a lot to communicate, to send out information, which I think is fine, and I think it's a great way to receive early access to information. I just wanted to, I'd like to make sure that the packet is kind of a comprehensive packet of all the materials, even if it has been sent out over email. you know, rather than, you know, having board members having to print out their own, keep track of it, print it out. Personally, it'd be a lot easier if I knew that in the packet, everything that's come out on email and everything else is going to be there, and it's a comprehensive packet, so that I don't have to go digging around through my files to have everything prepared. Certainly, I understand that occasionally things come in late, and you have them here for us on the desk, and we do our best to, you know, to deal with that. And, you know, if we feel as though we haven't had that information quickly enough, we can always delay for that reason. I don't have any problem with that. I understand that you're at the mercy of the applicant and their representatives at times, but I just want to make sure we're not skipping including things in the packet because it's been sent out on email, because sometimes during the heat of the day, we're all busy, we don't have time to collect all of that emailed information.
That's
fair?
no problem. We can certainly do that. I think the one thing that we have been definitely doing is emailing things like draft minutes, and then we've scanned copies of notices. We can print that out as well. If
Yeah, I don't think, in my opinion, the minutes aren't, I don't think it's necessary for
Okay.
you to, I'm okay with the draft minutes.
Okay.
What I'm really concerned about is the information that's relevant to things that we're going to be voting on, you know, site plan reviews and so forth
Okay.
on a given week. I want to make sure all that info's in the packet and comprehensive.
What about the notices from budding towns? Are you okay with emailing those? You feel those the criteria? I mean,
Usually those are in the packet, right?
We've been, I think for the last couple months,
Some
we've
have,
just
some
been
haven't.
emailing. What we'll do is we'll print out the ones that we get from the time that we send out the hopefully full packet to the meeting. We'll actually copy those, because by the time they're sent out in the next packet, it'd be old news.
Yeah. So I don't think is a big an issue either, right? Notices from abutting towns aren't as critical to us for being prepared to vote on matters as they come before us.
because technically, that's not something that we can't vote on anyway. It's more of informational
it's
purpose.
information.
So
Right,
it's
right.
not like you're trying to prepare for the meeting and come in and say, oh, I didn't see what's happening in Tewksbury on Main Street. You know, where you come in and you miss something that's on for the night's agenda, you're going in with the mindset of something, and you see something else that throws your mindset off because
Right.
you're concentrating on one issue on that project that you have a little reservation about, and all of a sudden, another city department might have already looked at that, made comments on it, you didn't get that comment.
Right,
You
exactly.
say, I was thinking about whether that fire access was there, I didn't see the letter, but, and we know sometimes we don't get those till late, which is some of the problem, right?
Yeah, the timing of it is, you know, for instance, today with,
You send them out, but they don't respond on time.
right, yeah, the Bridge Street project is one of those examples that we didn't even have plans for you until they were handed out tonight, so. But as soon as we get them, we can make sure that copies are printed and provided.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the packets, we should always have the agenda, even if it's changed. So when you pick it up, you know what the agenda looks like. Or if you forget to print the other one with you, when you bring your whole packet with you at night, you still have the agenda in there. Sometimes I printed out the agenda and left it in the file in the office. Then when I print my packet at night, I go looking for the agenda, and I'm like, oh, so at least the agenda should be in there all times. And it's only one piece of paper
Yeah, it
anyways.
should
And
be.
so at least if you separate the materials, at least you have the agenda in two spots. Which is, but
Yeah, we can certainly do that, absolutely. Work to improve that at least.
any other further comments from the board members? If not, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Chair votes yes. Thank you, everyone. Good night.